Hello. Hello. It's time. I think it's gonna be a short stream today. Archive. Okay, the Honey Adventure. I think I'm just gonna do this chapter today. And then Thursday, tomorrow I'm just gonna chill, and then Friday I'm gonna stream Wuwa 3.5. And then Saturday or Sunday I'll try to knock out the last chapter. I think that's my plan. Alright. Oh, Bayo and Toko. And this takes place after chapter 12. Wait, after chapter 13. Alright, so this is actually... Okay. Alright. The Honey Adventure. Oh, if you didn't hear, I'm just gonna do the Honey Adventure tonight, and then my plan is to Friday is gonna be Wuwa 3.5. And then Saturday or Sunday, I'm gonna try and do the last chapter. And then we'll be fully done with Mahoyo. So yeah, that's the plan. Alright. Alright. It had been 1 year since he'd moved into the city from his remote village. Wait, what? This takes place after... Because chapter 13 ends after a month after he arrived. This takes place after a year? One thing he realized during that time was that likes and dislikes were the main difference between human and beast. What? I thought he just ran away forever.
いいんじゃない?ちょっとみすぼらしいけど、周りに人間がいないのは綺麗でいいよね。
Wait. Is this talking about Bayo or Sojiro? Oh. Yeah, it would have to be before the fight, I guess, because the building's not destroyed. The figure dressed in a white coat danced to and fro down the hallway. He was like a young man. He was like a young woman in an old film, enjoying herself window shopping. He was actually enjoying the atrocious sight of the school building in ruins.
そこ、あんまりはしゃがないの。何しろ築60年からの廃屋なんだから。
My God.
調子に乗ってるとバキッと床を踏み抜いて。
His mouth shut before he could even say to let him have his fun. Only one set of footsteps echoed through the hallway. Not a single feather's worth of his 70-pound body was exerting any force on the floor beneath him. It wasn't clear whether he was paying reverence to the hallway or simply excited by it. It said that even walking through a grassy field, a beast is careful not to harm a single blade of grass. Apparently, this creature wrapped in a coat was no different. He was more a part of the environment itself than a settler of it. He held no regard for beasts greater or lesser than him, but when it came to his comrades, he at least displayed human-like, or rather, wolf-like clemency.
ま、相性はいいとプラスに考えましょう。町に出かけてくるけど、何か欲しいものはある? うん、特にいりません。あ、帰りにハンバーガー買ってきてくれたら嬉しいな。パン生地がどっしりしててハンバーグがギュッとしたやつがいい。
まだおもちゃより食い気ときた。食事の調達方法も確保しないとダメみたいね。失敗したかな。ルームサービスのあるホテルの方が後々証拠は残らなそう。
Wait. So... Oh, okay, so... Wait. Wait, so he was just sitting in this, school building for a year? Or no? No, he wasn't. He just moved in here. So where was he all this time, if it was a year in the city? Toko let out a defeated sigh. With her glasses on, she was restricted to her original way of speaking and gesturing. It was the beginning of December. Exactly 1 month had passed since they came to Misaki City. Until now, Toko had been attacking Misaki from a nearby neighborhood. Deciding it was time to get serious, she had moved her base of operations to this old school building.
何？ホテルの方が良かったの？
そりゃあ楽だもの。グレードが良ければホテル暮らしは快適です。
でもトウコさん、こういう廃墟好きだよね。
え？そうかな。
そうだよ。今回みたいなのは特にそう。趣味に走るとき、周りに人がいるの嫌がるじゃない。いろんなものに興味を持つくせに、興味を持たれるのは面倒っていうか。
Toko couldn't deny that observation. She had been under contact with him for 2 years, but it had only been about a year since he became her full-time bodyguard. He seemed to be able to see right through to the root of all the problems that plagued Toko.
人混みは嫌いじゃないんだけどね。ハイビルでもハイ工場でも、いっそあの遊園地でもよかったのよ。でもこんな田舎町じゃ君を連れているだけで噂になるでしょ。結果的にここに工房を構えるしかなかったの。
ちゃんと人型になってるじゃん僕。別に目立たないと思うけどな。
色合いの問題です。アジア系は無理にしてもせめてブルネットに化けてくれればいくらでもごまかせるんだけど。
Unfortunately, that wouldn't be happening. Simply being in human form at all was stressful for him. When he had to be human, his only condition was that he could look however he wanted. He was currently only in his form because they had to move from the town to the old school building. Once he found a classroom to sleep in, he'd be back to a wolf.
なんだって人型でいるのを嫌がるのかしらね。別に難しいわけじゃないんでしょそれ。もともとアストラル体みたいなものなんだからあなた。
Being an extremely versatile life form which required no body to remain stable. In the physical world, his body could change according to the situation. Matecraft would have defined him as a higher dimensional life form with a materialized soul.
そりゃあ何の力もリスクもないけど、面倒なものは面倒だよ。人間だって無駄なことはしたくないでしょ。僕、人型になることに有利性を全く感じないし。
He just dislikes it because he dislikes it. Apparently he saw no value at all in his human form. That was exactly why Toko insisted he make his appearance blend in more, but the boy argued that if he had to be in an unnatural state, he'd at least make himself comfortable. To him, this was the only fun way to be a human, and he wasn't going to accept it any other way. How is being a little twink boy fun? That does not sound fun. And so, this was why he had taken on the appearance of a foreign aristocrat in a provincial Japanese city. Even his posh coat had been handpicked by Toko to satisfy one of his many demands. What
じゃ
demand?
あお留守番お願いねレオくん。来ないとは思うけど、もし人が来たら捕まえておいて。その際足の一本ぐらいなら傷つけても OK だから。
You can rough them up a bit if you need to. Well, it's a good thing Kinomi didn't go any closer at that one time. And with that statement, Toko headed off into the city.
はーい、任されました。大丈夫。人間とかそもそも口に合わないし。こっちのことは気にせず、あのピリピリするお土産よろしくね。
Bayo plopped down onto a desk after he saw his employer off. He morphed back into his wolf form.
ああ、退屈。世界中を回ってこんな田舎町が終着とか。拍子抜けもいいところ。
It had been 2 years since Bayo met Toko Aozaki. After some deliberation with the werewolves, the mage was left in charge of Bayo's education. Wait, I forgot. Why did Bayo even go with Toko? It wasn't for her hair. It's... What did she offer again? Was it literally just the world and traveling? How does he know they taste bad? I mean, Bayo has no morals, he doesn't care. So he probably ate one once in the past. Keep reading. Of course his village had no real control over him. He didn't have to go with her. He decided to go simply because she seemed My question was answered in the very next sentence. Right. That's the sole reason. Toko stood before him in the cave where he slept and asked.
え？生きている意味が知りたい？
Oh, that's
なん
true.
だ。そんなことで取引が成立するとはね。
My question was answered. She smiled and cut off her long locks of hair to seal their pact. Oh, that's why she cut them off.
自由を知るには窮屈さを知っておかないとね。同じように生きている意味を知りたければ、まずは死ねないこだわりを見つけないと。
Then you must have a reason not to die.
そうだな。例えばの話。そいつを殺すまでは、とてもじゃないが死ねないほどの憎しみとか。
Wow, I wonder what she's talking about there. The hair was 20 years worth of Toko's life. In a way, her hair was a part of herself, but she parted with it easily. She was sure that Bayo was worth the 20 years it had taken her to grow that hair. Bayo too sensed that Toko was a creature of rare value. He was happy to have been selected by someone of her unusual talents, and though she preached learning restraint, he observed that she was a truly free woman. And then, Bayo accepted the terms of her contract and left his village. He took his first steps into the outside world. So he left because Toko was interesting and he always wanted to learn the meaning of life. The first year was spent at Toko's workshop in England, learning basic knowledge. Namely, it was at a college of the Mages Association called the Clock Tower. Where have I heard the Clock Tower before? At the time, Toko had her own dedicated familiar. Formally speaking, this familiar was Bayo's senior. But in that year's time, Bayo proved himself superior and earned the right to travel the world with Toko. They rode on a train that collected mystic eyes, known as the Rail Zeppelin. How does it collect mystic eyes? They saw the Merc Rake, an ancient giant octopus living in the North Sea. They explored the Bermuda Triangle, a place of no return, connected to other realms. Is that a thing in the Nasuverse? What other realms could it possibly be? They met the remains of a mage of the Elder title, a league of ancients deep in Western Europe. All their exploits were odd and exciting enough to hold his interest. And throughout them all, Bayo felt that he'd been right to join Toko. This was certainly less boring than sleeping in his cave. Oh, he's looking freaky there. But sweet honey makes one crave even sweeter poison. Poison? Having developed a taste for adventure, he now demanded even greater thrills. It was only natural that such an innocent creature would start to look forward to his next prey. The pinnacle of that desire rested on Toko's final goal. For all her liberty and what the fuck is aplomb? Aplomb. Aplomb refers to confident, composed, and stylish behavior, especially under pressure. Yeah, I guess she does have stylish nature under pressure. For all her liberty and aplomb, there was one prey she would not stop chasing until she caught it once and for all. With every new adventure, Bayo would ask,
ねえ、これがトウコさんの殺したい相手?
However, the mage would always smile wryly and shake her head in response. Even this puppet master of extraordinary talent claimed that it was no easy task. Her target was in a realm far beyond anyone they dealt with so far, beyond human knowledge perhaps. Perhaps beyond even Bayo. Was in a realm? Well, there is two people she wanted to kill, right? It was Alko and their grandfather. The way that this person's being described, there's no way it's Alko. At least, like, not yet. It has to be the grandfather, right? But who could this mysterious person be? And how could they be so powerful? Is it the grandfather? Bayo couldn't help but be curious. Discovering that he was hired for magical reasons, he mustered a rare bit of fighting spirit, thinking he'd found a worthy foe, but
冷静になって考えてみると、本物が偽物を相手にするとか大人げないかも。魔法なんて言っても、結局は人間の手によるものなんだし。
Clearly it was only still interested in itself. It knew nothing of life or freedom. Its only pleasure was found in food. Bayo didn't necessarily feel dissatisfied, but it was becoming harder to stave off his boredom. Also, since accompanying Toko on her adventures, his feelings towards her had become a bit confused. I really hope they cover, as this takes place after, like in the book, in the way the books were lined on the shelf, this takes place after chapter 13. So I hope they cover how Bayo feels after getting aura farmed by Sojiro in chapter 12. Yeah.
トウコさん、あれでほんと一途だから。
Like, surely this whole chapter isn't just like the backstory before they arrive to town. This takes place before that. The whole chapter is a flashback. What the heck? Shouldn't it take place like? I don't know. Because, like, for the most part, when you look at that shelf of all the books, it's in chronological order of the story. So, like, if this takes place at the beginning of December, shouldn't it be around, like, the beginning instead of after chapter 13 on the shelf? Like, surely this entire chapter isn't just a flashback.
何でもできるのは僕と同じなのに。 何にでも一生懸命になれるのってちょっと変だよね。
He slumped his shoulders exaggeratedly and closed his eyes. The golden wolf drifted off to sleep, not realizing that his feelings were in fact those of jealousy. Oh yeah, he is projecting because Bayo could probably do anything he wants. But he's all he wants to do is, yeah, eat and sleep. Yeah. Projection.
"4年ぶりに帰ってきてみれば、住み慣れた町の面影はどこへやら。駅前なんてもう別物だし、大手術にも程が。ああ、やっぱり角のタバコ屋さんなくなってる。ああ、自動販売機でタバコを買うのにもそろそろ慣れなくちゃいけないのかも。
Toko walked through her hometown for the first time in 4 years, grumbling to herself. She was on an aimless and careless stroll. No familiar escorted her, and she'd even let her self-defense bag back at the hideout. Wait, so like, what if she just ran into Aoko and Alice here? What would happen then? Today she was in full tourist mode, not nervous about a thing.
ここなんてあぜ道同然だったのに、今じゃ立派なストリートときた。因果なものね。帰ってきたっていうのに、あっちに戻った時と同じ気持ちになってきた。
This was Toko's second time going back home. After leaving the Awazaki home 4 years ago, she secretly returned to Misaki. The first time was longer ago. When Toko was 14 years old, she studied abroad at an academy in England. That was a lot of vowels. She spent 2 years there before returning to Japan. Then, she'd enroll in a local high school named Rayan Girls Academy, and headed back to England 3 years later after graduating. That was 4 years ago. Now she felt the same as she did then, when she returned to that English country town where she lived for 2 years.
寂しい？ちょっと違う。呆れてるとも違うし、怖がっているも近くて遠いような。
She rounded her shoulders and fell deep into thought. Toko felt a tingle run up her spine in a way that couldn't really be described in words. Times were changing faster than ever. Everything was relatively inexpensive and could be replaced on a whim. After thinking to herself for a bit, she cracked her knuckles and set forth. There's no use overthinking any of this. This was just how things were now. That's all there was to it. It was only natural for the old to make way for the new.
つまり、私の時代ってことだ。
You can do this. The sudden spark of self-enlightenment gave Toko the encouragement she needed, and she set off with high spirits towards the train station. Striding down the boulevard, she exuded the confidence of a supermodel or dictator. Although she was not about to exclaim, "My conquest begins with the main street. Time to tear it up." Her enthusiasm was, of course, still there. Toko, however, had something she had to accomplish first. What? Before she could give thought to putting an end to the town's thoughtless attempts at modernization that would become outdated in just a few years. Why is there a gap there?
"甘い設定だ。
Ooh.
こんな釘の絞りで客を煙に負けると思ったか？
Is this the scene where Sojiro spots her for the first time? Toko's first destination was not one of Misaki's Toko's first destination was not one of Misaki's protective sigils, but rather her old favorite pachinko parlor. Though the area around the train station had undergone a dramatic makeover, the back streets were mostly unchanged. Toko had exchanged 5,000 yen for some little silver pachinko balls before going upstairs and sitting at the machine she would determine was paying out the most that day.
そろそろ打ち止めかな。千両箱が12箱か。まあ、4年ぶりにしちゃ上等だろ。
She sounded slightly disappointed, but her lips and posture betrayed her good humor. Pachinko parlors were a staple form of entertainment in Japan, but they were largely absent in other countries. High-stakes gamers criticized it as inefficient, time-consuming, too luck-dependent, unrewarding, and so forth. Basically, a child's game. She's talking about TFT. Yeah, inefficient, time-consuming, yeah. Too luck-dependent, yeah. Unrewarding, yeah. It is a child's game. When Toko was studying abroad, she didn't see anything that even resembled a pachinko parlor. However, she wasn't here playing pachinko because she was feeling nostalgic for it after 5 years. She simply needed a war chest.
しかし、ヘリのチャーター代だけで足が出るとは。日本は平和すぎて、裏稼業の相場が高すぎるんだ。クソ。
Is it that easy to get that rich at a pachinko parlor?
おかげで無一文だ。とりあえず、レオの食いぶちだけでも稼がにゃならん。
Wow. Even Toko's a bum. If only Sojiro were in her life. Toko had chartered the helicopter to airlift 3 shipping containers full of materials to remodel the old school building into a workshop. There weren't any roads a truck could take to get to the old school out deep in the mountains, so she had been forced to burn through the last of her savings.
お、37。こいつは本格的におしまいかな。まったく、こういうどうでもいいゲームだけは星の巡りがいいと来ている。
Her smile remained in spite of her complaints. There was nothing more Toko-esque than her sitting cross-legged in this pachinko parlor, one hand on the machine with the other holding a cheap cigarette. Wait, why does she suddenly have glasses again? Wait, she didn't have glasses just a second ago. What? Toko noticed something out of the corner of her eye. Why do I say all this stuff before? I should just read. Never mind. I won't say my thoughts out loud anymore. She glanced over towards the odd sound she heard and saw a pale-faced parlor employee. He had a baby face and looked like he was still in high school. Upon seeing Toko, he froze for a moment, then ran off. Or rather, he fled in a panic. I can't believe he fumbled that hard. Mage though she was, Toko was still in the prime of her youth. Though she didn't like it when guys ogled her or tried to strike up a conversation, she thought a boy running full tilt away from her was a bit much. Toko made a mental note to scare the crap out of that kid the next time she saw him, and returned to her game. Did she do that in Chapter 9? Might have. I don't know. With her winning tickets in hand, Toko left the pachinko parlor. She had won quite a bit, but it was hard for her to feel good about it after what had happened at the end of her session. Wondering what that had been about, she looped around the back of the parlor to see... Wait. Why did he get so scared at that time? What did she do there? Like, I'm pretty sure she was just like... She did nothing, but Sojiro was terrified for some reason. And obviously at that time he was still new to town, he was still really unfamiliar with it, but I don't remember what made him so terrified there. Instinct. I mean, I guess. Wondering what that had been about, she looped around the back of the parlor to redeem her winnings for cash.
おや、トウコさんじゃないですか。
Who could that be? She stopped in her tracks, frozen by a familiar voice she hadn't heard in 4 years. Fight on? Nope. Bayo's ears perked up as she woke from his slumber. It was just before sunset. He opened his eyes with a big yawn, sniffing out a familiar scent in the air getting closer.
よっと。
Bayo jumped down to the floor and transformed back into his human form. Though he and Toko didn't have a strict master-servant relationship, he felt he should at least go and greet her since he was supposed to be watching over the place in her absence.
あれ？
Yo, why is she looking like that? Bayo's face scrunched into a perplexed frown as they met in the hallway. He sensed something more to the smell he'd been so used to.
Tadaima, Beo-kun. はい、真面目にお留守番していたお土産。
Toko handed the paper bag she was holding to Bayo. Bayo was happy to get his hands on the bag stuffed full of hamburgers, but he tilted his head at the odd lingering scent. Chat?
どうしたの？浮かない顔して。留守中何かあった？
いや、思わず寝ちゃうぐらい何もなかったけど、トウコさんの方こそ何かあった？なんか元気ないし、妙に疲れてるし、何よりちゃんと僕の好きなお店のハンバーガー買ってきてるし。
え？そう？別に何もなかったけど。
This was all extremely suspicious. One pain point for Bayo was Toko's usual complete lack of interest in food. Toko thought the hamburger was the same no matter where you ate one, so she had often just stopped at wherever was closest. Thus Toko would only stop at a certain Asian burger chain, still rare in Japan, maybe 1% of the time, not to mention.
いいじゃない。ちゃんと好きなお店のバーガーを買ってきたんだから。
Whoa, she's flustered, chat.
これは私なりのベオくんへの感謝の気持ち。今までいろいろ連れ回したけど、これからもよろしくね。
She had a sickly sweet smile on her face. If any of the puppets she had let loose in Misaki heard what she was saying right now, they'd probably fall into a logic error loop and self-destruct. Toko was not one to ever consider the rights of her familiars.
うさんくさい、芝居くさい、真っ向くさい。優しいトウコさんなんてトウコさんじゃない。
Sus.
いっつも周りを恨んでいて文句ばっかり言って幸せそうな人たちをめちゃくちゃにしたいんだけど大義名分がないから我慢してる。そんな理性のおかげでかろうじて性格破綻者を免れてるトウコさんはどこ行ったのさ。
My God.
失礼しちゃうな。私だってたまには優しくなる時ぐらいあるんだから。ほら、4年ぶりに故郷に帰ってきたのよ。ベオくんだって里に帰ったらちょっとぐらいホッとするでしょ。それと同じ。私だってホームシックになる程度の可愛らしさはあるんです。
すっごい嘘。月が涙を流すぐらい嘘。
本当です。もうベオくんそれ返して。罰として夕食抜き。
No. Toko made a grab for the paper bag, but Bayo dodged and jumped out the window. He dexterously kicked off against the wall and scampered up onto the roof of the old school building.
なんだい、 ほんとつまんない。
Chat, what did she do that we didn't see?
言い訳する瞳子さんとか僕見たくな
Why
い。
is she so happy? He pulled out a hamburger from the paper bag and took a big bite out of it. That said, though her attitude had seemed like an act to Bayo, it was true that Toko was in an unusually good mood. It was unclear why that was the case, but Toko seemed to be feeling something special, or at least something she hadn't ever shown to Bayo before.
なんだろう、あの匂い。
Another man.
妙にふわふわしてて、鬱陶しくて。
Bayo couldn't understand what exactly that feeling was. He only knew basic feelings such as like and dislike, delicious or disgusting. He wasn't able to articulate much further than that.
まあいいけど、僕には関係ないし。瞳子さんも明日になればいつもの瞳子さんだろうし。
Bayo continued to eat through his hamburgers, still not completely satisfied with the day's course of events. The truth was, even if Bayo didn't care enough to understand it, he was still a little upset that there is something he didn't know. A few days passed. Unbeknownst to the people of Misaki, progress was being made on the remodeling of this old school building. Meanwhile, Bayo was bored out of his mind knowing he had to be stuck here for at least another month. He could feel both his body and his mind dulling as he spent his days simply lounging around eating meat. On the other hand,
買い出しに出てくるから、あとはよろしくね。
she seems way happier not going after Aoko.
元気してた？はい、お土産のローストビーフ。行ってきます。屋上の機材片付けておいてね。ただいま。今日もお留守番ご苦労様。
Yo, why is the heart there?
よし、行ってくるでござる。
What the heck?
お疲れ。お酒臭い？バカ。酔ってなんかないです。
no.
全然酔ってなんかないもん。
She's going drinking every night. This is what Toko had become. A bum. The mage was constantly out and always in a good mood, in stark contrast to Bayo, who spent his days doing nothing. Evidently, she was happy with how her workshop was becoming more and more fortified by the day.
違う。もう絶対違う。
Was the scent he smelled just alcohol, or was it something else? I feel like it was something
そんなん
else.
で瞳子さんの機嫌は良くなんないし。
Yeah, alcohol is not enough to put her in such a good mood.
ここに関しちゃぐちぐち不満ばっかりこぼしてるし。何よりござるとかバカっぽいこと言わないし。
どうしたのベオくん？すっごく不細工な顔してるけど、そろそろ暴れたくて仕方がない？
そういう問題じゃありません。まあそりゃ早く本命とエラと戦ってみたいけど、もうちょっと先なんでしょ。なら我慢する。瞳子さんの言葉は今のところ外れないからおとなしく従います。
I'm kind of surprised by how impatient Bayo is. I mean, Bayo has lived for thousands of years, so like him being this impatient, just waiting for a month, like, bro.
けど
Such a child.
なんか変。いつも下準備の時はこれぐらい暇だけど緊張感がない。毎日食べて寝て食べて寝てじゃ太る。
It's
ブクブ
going
ク
to
に
make
太る
me
よ。
fat.
そんなのかっこよくないよ。
何言ってるんだか。ベオくんにそんな心配は無用でしょ。排泄もしないくせにまともな生き物ぶってるんじゃ
I
あり
don't
ま
think
せ
Bayo
ん。
can get fat.
うん。 だから主に瞳子さんがブクブクに。
ベオ君、それ本当？数値は変わってないはずだけど、なんかこうアストラル的に増えちゃったりしてる？
This is what Bayo was talking about. Toko knew the accuracy of Bayo's eye, and trusted his discerning vision over even the numbers on her scale. Normally Toko would just remove her glasses and say something like,
唐突だが、特攻兵器の有用性を確認したくなった。ああ、いや、意見は聞いていない。さあ、ベオ、この首輪をつけてみろ。思いっきりハイに飛べるぞ。
but she hadn't done anything of the sort, and it was beyond weird for her.
別に増えてないよ。昨日とちょっとの上下差はあるけど、そんなの人間なら当たり前だし、いちいち本気にするとか見苦しいからやめてほしい。
本当？こう後でボテッとくるような気配とかない？
ないってば。昨日取った栄養分はきれいに分配されてるし、いつも通りの瞳子さんだよ。
That last part was a lie. She was not the same Toko that Bayo had always known. Even though she was physically the same, there is something still odd about her since a few days ago. That strange, floaty, lingering scent was still there. It was a change that only a wild beast like Bayo could discern, but it was getting stronger with each passing day. What could that scent be? Bayo was annoyed because he could not figure out what that scent was.
それなら安心安心と。私は出かけてくるから、お留守番よろしくね。
Just think. Toko could have just been like this for the rest of her life. Could have just forgotten about Alko and her revenge. Man. Toko failed to notice Bayo's poor mood and left the old school building in her usual carefree mood. This was how it had been for days now. Bayo stared at his own reflection in the window and contemplated for a while. Oh, maybe this is when they spot him in the window in chapter 8. Unfortunately, this wouldn't solve anything. It wouldn't change the fact that his employer was still acting strangely. And it wouldn't get rid of the uncertainty that he was constantly feeling in his chest. He knew he didn't have much other choice. He's gonna sneak out of the building and spy on her.
よし、瞳子さんを尾行しよう。
Yes, I read it. He decided to let go of his principles for just this one day. They say winter is going to be colder than usual this year. Make sure you got sufficient food, clothing, and shelter. We should be fine on clothing, but make sure to shore up on the other two. He listened to the talk around town as he passed through Misaki. It was just past 1 in the afternoon on a weekday. Workers had returned to the office after their lunch breaks, and the kids were all still in school. The main street was fairly calm and relaxed, with mostly housewives out and about. Yet one person stood out in this calm and gentle sea of people. Toko endured the stares of the housewives out shopping, salespeople in their shops, and salarymen out on business as she walked through the main street. It wasn't just her sense of style that stood out, but also her generally powerful presence that attracted eyes. I'm really surprised that Aoko and Alice never came across her. Because I'm pretty sure Misaki's a small town, so like, you think like one of these days they would have just crossed paths. And from the sounds of it, Toko stands out a lot, so. To put it simply, she walked with the confidence of a model on the runway. Aura.
人には目立つなっていうくせに本人は腫れたもんな。潜伏期間中 相手に見つかるのは僕だけのせいじゃないと思う。
Bayo kept about 10 yards behind Toko, careful not to actually mutter the words he was thinking in his head. In Toko's defense, she was fully aware of how much she stood out in the crowd. If she was out at a busier time of day, she always wore an accessory inscribed with a rune that diverted people's attention away from her and made her stand out approximately 40% less. Oh. Toko finished up her shopping and headed toward the residential part of town. She walked up to a house that looked completely normal. Oh my god, she is seeing someone. I can't believe this. It looked as though the things she had bought were for the resident of this house. The nameplate outside read Asagi. Misaki was in the mountains, but for just a moment, Bayo got a whiff of sea brine. Assuming he must have just mistaken it for some other smell, he put it out of his mind. Toko came out of the house after about 30 minutes. She stretched her arms above her head and took a deep breath. Whatever had gone on inside seemed to have been rather serious. It was as if a weight had been lifted off from her shoulders.
これで根回しは終了と。
Negotiations for what?
あとは最後の念押しね。めんどくさい。
Toko murmured, exasperated. But lurking behind her words, Bayo could still detect that lofty scent emanating from her mouth. Her next stop was another plain-looking apartment. Hey, that looks like Sojiro's apartment. Would he have moved into the mansion at this time already, though? It looked as though she had just happened to walk by, but Bayo's nose was not so easily deceived. Toko made it look like she was just aimlessly killing time, but she had in fact arranged to arrive at the apartment at exactly 2:30 p.m. In the parking lot of the apartment. Oh. Ritsuka Susei stepped out of the room on the first floor.
はーい、お久しぶり。
What?
こんなところでばったり出会うなんて奇遇ね、リツカ。
I can't believe this.
嘘、トコちゃん？あなた帰ってきてたの？
Toko.
ちょっと前にね、こっそり人目を忍ぶように窓から侵入するサンタクロースさながらに。
Is Ritsuka aware of the family drama for Toko?
言うまでもなく目的はこの町をぶっ潰すこと。
Oh.
私の過去ともどもきれいさっぱり清算するため、この度準備万端でやってまいりました。なので邪魔になる教会の人間とか教会の人間とか気づかれる前にやっちゃうぞ。
あらあら、それはご丁寧にどうも。で、トコちゃん、それ私のこと。教会の人間って今私しかいないんですけど。
あら不思議。むしろラッキー。懐かしくて散歩していたらまさか標的の一人に出会うなんて。一つ手間が省けた感じ。
関係ないの。私教会と関係ないから。
Wait, so she's in the association, but she has nothing to do with the association? That doesn't make sense.
だってここ1年真面目に仕事してないし。
Oh.
というか、仮にも兄弟子を捕まえて本気で殺すとか言わないでほしいです。
Brothers in training? Doesn't she mean sisters in training? The woman was tearfully flailing her arms at this point. She had nothing to worry about, though. Bayo could see even from where he was peering through the fence that Toko had no real intent to kill anyone. She had a terrible habit of messing with people for her own entertainment. This time was no different. Unfortunately, the pleasure she took in it only made the target of her jokes feel doubly worse.
それを言うなら姉弟子でしょ。
True.
だってトコちゃん妹って感じしないんだもん。間違っても姉弟子なんて胸を張って言えません。
そうよね。技量的にもとても先輩なんて言えるものじゃなかったし、律香の特技なんて今じゃ深夜販売の商品以下だし、そろそろ食害考えたら？いいとこ紹介するよ。イタリアで見つけたもう廃業寸前のサーカス一座とかどう？
そんな日給バイトはコリゴリです。せめて週休のところを紹介して。
うわー、通販以下ってところは否定しないんだ。
なぜ？トコちゃんの指摘は正しいわ。だって私何にもできない役立たずですから。魔術協会一のお荷物、ここに参上。
Yeah, she is pretty useless, honestly. Maybe she was taken aback by Ritsuka's guileless smile. Why the... Guile. Maybe she was taken aback by Ritsuka's guileless smile, but Toko couldn't help but grin back at her. If one didn't know better, they would seem like good friends.
私への疑いは解けたと見たわ。それなら寄ってく？これから用事があったんだけど、別に後回しでいいし。久しぶりだもの。お互い積もる話とか楽しそうじゃない？
ほんと相変わらずゆるゆるね、律香は。確かに気が変わったわ。その様子じゃ教会との関係なんてないようなものだし。あ、そう。本気で青子の味方なんだ。
I thought she was neutral. At least that's what I
もちろ
remember.
ん。アコちゃんはまだ半人前ですもの。つかず離れず、あくまで他人行儀に。アコちゃんが死ぬような目にあっても遠くから見守るわ。
それは結構。青子もほんといい性格をした理解者に恵まれたもんだ。
Yeah, that would have been kind of bad if she was on Aoko's side. Considering how she treated Sojiro. Yeah. Toko took a step back, away from Ritsuka. She looked a bit regretful as she signaled that the conversation was over.
あれ？寄っていかないの？私、コーヒー入れるの上手くなったよ。
ありがとう。けど遠慮しとく。こっちはまだ潜伏中だし、町攻略の準備もあるしね。ここで緊張感をなくすのはうまくないでしょ。
あらまあ、真面目さ。でもそうよね。トコちゃんはそういう人でした。根を詰めすぎて目的より手段そのものに熱中しちゃうタイプ。ほんと、どんな準備かはわからないけど、トコちゃんに狙われる人たちは大変だ。
別に普通でしょ。基本魔術戦やってこっちが勝ったら刻印をもらうだけ。時代遅れの魔女じゃあるまいし、倒した相手に呪いとかかけないわよ、私。
だからそこです。相手の命より収集を優先してるじゃない。その人たち目玉だけになっても生きているなんてことにならなければいいけど。あなたは気を使っているつもりだろうけど、相手にとっては拷問だからね、それ。
Toko nodded to show her agreement. Her collection of crests would appear that way on the outside. Toko sought profit in combat. If a mate she defeated could provide her with profitable materials, she would not take their life. She would even save their life if she knew it would be to her advantage to do so. As a result, her workshop in London had a facility specifically built for the comfort of her magical suppliers. It housed mages who had either lost to her in battle or who had willingly agreed to contribute to her cause. Toko held many magecraft patents which earned her up to £10,000 a month in royalties. However, the majority of this money went to the upkeep of that facility. The demands from the residents of the place for additional facilities and special privileges increased with every passing day. It was reaching a point where Toko needed to decide whether to incorporate or just let everyone go and be done with it. So which one did you do?
地下ってそういうものじゃないわよ。拷問なんて手間暇かかりすぎるし、娯楽を与える方が管理コストは低いんだってば。今はいい脚本揃ってるしね。適当な映画のプロットを拝借してそれを再現するだけで喜んでもらえるし、仮想であれ現実であれ自分が主役になれる物語なんて最高じゃない？
つかぬことをお伺いいたしますけど、上演ジャンルはどのようなバランスで？恋愛3、活劇3、サスペンス3、アニメ 1？
は？そりゃ基本ホラーでしょう。エンタメの全てが詰まってるんだし。
私、トコちゃんのそういうところ素で怖いわ。というか、女の子なんだからもっとロマンを求めてほしいの。
今回捕まえる候補に上がっている人間に言われると、さすがに考慮せざるを得ない。囚人を放り込む箱庭のバランスに気を使ってみればいいの？ホラー8ぐらい？
Wait, why are they talking about genres of stories again? Wait. What?
恋愛9でお願いします。それがダメなら推理9でぜひ。
This was clearly a response from someone who knew she'd lose if she had to go up against Toko.
了解。そういう事態になったら善処する。
はーい。そういう事態ってどんな事態？
誰かの味方をするのはいいけど、私の敵に回った時かな。あと、今日のことを口外した瞬間、足元からパクッといくから気をつけて。
足元って影のこと？あれ、そもそもなんていうか、トコちゃん、私一歩も動けないんだけど。
No, her mystic eyes.
ごめんなさいリツカ。実は1週間かけてあなたの部屋に罠を仕掛けてたの。ドアの境界に影で作った使い魔を仕込ませたみたいな。しばらくはあなたの影に住み着いているから、私に不利な証言したら大変だぞ。
私すでに大変だったのか。悪魔、人でなし、天才悪魔。トコちゃんはもう少し一般常識を学ぶべきです。もう道理で夜な夜な泥棒さんがピッキングしてると思った。
Ritsuko hadn't noticed the shadow familiar, but she had sensed Toko as she was setting her trap last night. Wow. Toko didn't think Ritsuko could speak about common sense since she had ignored an apparent burglar trying to break into her home for a week.
その使い魔、年明けには解けるから安心なさ。
I was gonna try to ignore that. Okay. We don't. Okay, never mind.
じゃあねリツカ、縁があったらまた会いましょう。その時は自慢のコーヒーをご馳走してね。あと深夜販売の商品だってバカにできたもんじゃないわ。あのシンプルさ結構好きよ私。
Toko winked at her old friend and left the apartment behind her. Hopefully, we'll meet again. I don't think that ever happened. Sag. Toko realized those were empty words. Her plan would not spare her mortal body. Be it a success or be it a failure, Toko Aozaki would be erased from this world. Still, that was no reason not at least say something about meeting again. Perhaps Toko had more affection for Ritsuka than she realized. Even so, she left that friend behind in a state of paralysis. Toko had indeed returned home. That fact alone revealed much to Ritsuka. 2 years older than Toko, Ritsuka had been contracted 10 years prior to monitor Toko's grandfather, the mage who discovered the fifth magic. That made her both Toko and Aoko senior. And she knew the sisters rather well.
そりゃ口止めの一つもしないとね。トコちゃんを見て真っ先に警戒するのは私と。
Wait, what? Oh, I thought it was a typo the whole time. I guess she actually just shortens the pronunciation of Toko's name. Toko. One other person. The first person to be on alert upon seeing Toko would be myself and... I mean, is it Aoko? Is it Alice? Is it their grandfather? Yeah, the grandfather. There's another with more seniority than... There was one other beautiful person, one who had taught Toko. Well, it's not the grandfather then. I don't think they'd call the grandfather beautiful.
ま、そっちはそっちで根回ししてるかな。
There's no way they introduce a completely new and random character this chapter, right?
トコちゃんならそのあたり完璧だろうけど。もうちょっと敵には非常になった方がいいわよね。トコちゃんは相手の人権を尊重しすぎっていうか、根本が甘いっていうか。
I mean, she's not a monster.
殺すと決めた相手に顔を見せるとか、どうかと思うの、私。
Toko was a researcher more than she was a mage. Generally, she wasn't a fighter. She was cruel, but not cold. Despite her capability for vicious, ruthless treatment of people, she also displayed a measure of compassion for others. Ritsuka sighed as if the problem were her own, and hoped that inconsistency wouldn't end up hurting Toko. If only she knew what would happen. Toko left the neighborhood and began heading towards the largest park in the town. It was 3 in the afternoon out on this early winter day on the boulevard. If it were autumn, the street would be lined with people out for a walk to look at the colorful trees, but now Toko was alone. Though to be accurate, she wasn't quite alone. Is Bayo still tracking her? Oh. Bayo was walking along the grass more than 10 yards behind his employer when he noticed a change in her scent.
トウコさん、こんな街中でメガネ外してる。
Oh, she's going demon time. Toko's personality changed significantly depending on whether or not she was wearing her glasses. Bayo wasn't sure which side was her true self, but he did know that she was much more serious and cruel without her glasses. I'm gonna assume that without her glasses is her actual true self, because, like, at the end of the day, glasses are an accessory, so, like, you know, without her glasses, that's her, like, true, without a mask, I guess. So I'm gonna assume that this sadistic side of her was actually her true self. It wasn't quite to the level of a split personality, more like a reordering of priorities. She mainly took off her glasses when she was about to fight someone. Doing so made her less human. It pushed all senses of compromise, concern, and sympathy out of her brain.
ってことは、 さっきから近づいてくる匂いはトウコさんの敵。
Bayo furrowed his brow as he hid behind the tree. He could certainly smell hostility and anticipation emanating from Toko. But at the same time, he couldn't help but scrunch his nose at the strange scent that kept getting stronger.
こんにちは。
It was him? Why did I not think of... I completely forgot about this guy.
また出会えるとは奇遇ですね、トウコさん。
This
あ
guy
あ、
has aura.
たまたま続いた偶然だ。世間話をする仲でもなし、挨拶を交わす程度に済ませよう。
So they made some kind of deal, probably. Bayo had no idea who was talking to Toko. His name was Eiri Fumitsuka. He was a priest at Aida Church and an enemy to Bayo and Toko. However, it was impossible for Bayo to sense this. He had no personal hostility towards the clergy anyways. As far as Bayo could tell, he was just a regular person. There is no chance that Toko could be at a disadvantage here. He would later learn a harsh lesson from someone who seemed similarly harmless, but that was a tale for another time. True.
そちらの状況はどうなんだ？神の家は働き者揃いだからな。利権を漁りに来る欲深は現れそうか？
いや、働き者というのは全力で肯定しますけど、欲が深いとかそんな人は少ないですよ、こちらは。彼らがやってくるときは大抵は競技のためですから、欲望より責務で動く人たちって怖くないですか？
無駄話はしないと言っただろう。結論を言え。お前の腰巾着は鐘を鳴らしそうか？
Is your follower going to sound the bell or not? For what? That she's in town?
やれやれ、人のことは言えませんよ。トウコさんだってワーカホリック寸前じゃないですか。もっとこう余裕のあるコミュニケーションを取りませんか？立場上いつ最後の仰せになるかわからないわけですし。
ふざけろ。いつも何もこれが最後だよ、エイリ。
Toko curtly rejected the smiling priest's request for a chat. She was being as blunt as she could.
だいたい次があるとしたら、その時は殺し合いだろう。お互い手の内は知っているしな。顔を合わせた瞬間、どちらかが死んでいる。
それはトウコさんだけの思い込みですけどね。どうしてこう邪魔者は始末するという方向でしか物事を考えられないんでしょうか、あなたたちは。
Airi shrugged his shoulders in frustration. Toko kept her gaze fixed intently on his overcoat. No matter how many times he said he wanted to resolve this peacefully, she would bet her pride that he didn't mean it.
まったく、そういうところも成長して帰ってくるんですから、育つのは女性としての魅力だけに留めておいてほしいものです。ああ、そう睨まない。本題に入りますから。目下、教会への報告は私が一任されています。司祭への報告は、現在、管理者は異端者と交戦中、中立の条約に基づき、司祭代理権限で監督中。なお、異端者の所属は不明。現在履歴を調査中。といったところです。
この町に現れた魔術師は所属不明ということになっているんだな。
ええ、シスターユイカは私とは別所轄の方ですが、彼女は異端者の攻防はおろか、その姿さえつかめていません。彼女が単独で敵の正体を暴くまで、教会から横槍が入ることはないんじゃないですかね。今まで通り土地を狙いに来た馬術師同士の小競り合いだと思っているんじゃないですか。
そうか。では取引成立だな。
that they're gonna remain neutral.
お前が私の帰国の件を握りつぶしている間は、私も多
As
少
long as you're
回
the
り
only
道
one
を
who
する。
knows that I'm back in town, I'll lay
青
low.
崎の親戚筋にも手は出さない。
Yeah, so they're gonna let her do her own thing.
よかった。東子さんは無差別な破壊工作はしませんが、とにかく最適な道筋を好みますから。勢い、どこぞの工場とかオフィスビルとか秘密基地にしそうでしょ。私がこちらに赴任している間、流血事件が続くと困るというか、私の評価が落ちるようなことは何とも。
Toko had to resist the urge to object and ask just what kind of person he thought she was. She did hate wastefulness. But she wasn't about to entirely abandon the side. What the fuck? She did hate wastefulness, but she wasn't about to entirely abandon society and its norms just for the sake of doing things optimally. Besides, criminal activities were always a pain to clean up later, and thus far more inefficient.
まあいいさ。お互いの利益が一致したんだからな。
So it seems like the deal is, as long as she just stays quiet and doesn't cause a ruckus or anything, the church will stay neutral and say nothing about her.
では、あとはことが済むまで生還を決め込んでおけ。
Because the church is supposed to have a deal with the Aozaki family, right? As considering Misaki is the Aozaki territory and they're inside Misaki, they should have like an alliance, but they're kind of betraying that alliance by like not reporting Toko to them, which is what he was talking about earlier.
もうお帰りですか。名残惜しいですね。結局一度も今のあなたの素顔を見られなかった。
私は逆だ。そのカマキリ面もこれで見納めかと思うとせいせいする。
ああ、待ってください。お別れの前に一つ質問を。
Avery spoke just as Toko was about to take a step back. He had effortlessly stopped her from leaving.
所感なのですが、東子さん、今大変息苦しくはありませんか？
まさか。私はかつてないほど充実しているよ。なぜそんなことを聞く、エイリ？
いえ、だって楽しそうではありますが、幸せそうではありませんので、あなた自身気づいてはいないようでしたから、知己として心配になったのです。
幸せの定義か。思い出したよ。お前の口癖だったな、それは。全くその通りだ。私の良しとする幸福が他人であるお前にわかるものか。つまらん心配はするな。
いや、そりゃ細かいところまではわかりませんけどね。特に女の人の幸福感なんて、それこそ危機快快ですから。ですがほら、幸福の形は2つに大別できます。東子さんの場合、それすら気づいていないようですから、大変見苦しいなと思いまして。
ほう。ご忠告痛み入る。腐っても兄弟子というわけか。いいぞ。聞いてやるから言ってみろ。
If it happened to be something worthless, she would kill him. If it erased all the progress she had made on her plans over the past month, or even the last 2 years, she would kill him. Toko's hostility had clearly turned to a murderous rage.
当たり前のことですよ。 相対的なものと絶対的なもの、比べる相手がいるかいないかが幸福の違いです。
It depends on whether you compare yourselves to others.
自分が穏やかであれば幸福なのか、それともどんなに満ち足りていても人より劣っていては我慢できない人間なのか。
I think she's definitely the latter.
幸福の定義なんて詰まるところはその2つですよ。私が言うまでもありませんが、
What is the point he's trying to
多
make
くの
though?
人間はただ人より少しだけ幸せでありたいのです。
The holy man smiled calmly, wrapped in his shadowy black clothing. Toko remembered clearly now. This was a man who didn't actually believe in the concept of true happiness.
ほら、そんな殺気は収めて、シスターユイカが飛んできます。
Well, I guess it wasn't something worthless that he said. But again, what was the point of him mentioning what happiness is?
トウコさんの幸福感は絶対的なもの。あなたは自分が確かであれば満ち足りるタイプの人だったんですけど
I
ね。
know your idea is not relative. What? Is that really true? Or did she just change?
他人が気になるなんて、そんな相対的な幸福感を持っているのは。
Aoko? No, it wouldn't be. Dude, I feel like it's the. I feel like Aoko's happiness is absolute. He stopped himself before he could say, "Wait, what?" The only Aozaki I know who has a relative definition of happiness is. I feel like no, Aoko doesn't really compare herself to others, though, right? She just compares herself to herself, and just holding herself at that standard. Or is it like their definitions of happiness flipped, and now Aoko's is absolute and Toko's is relative? The priest seemed to have spoken out of genuine concern for Toko, but his words had the opposite effect on her. Although he was reluctant to part on such ill terms, Eri knew it was best not to anger Toko any further.
言葉が過ぎました。お許しを、ハイマスター。それでは私はこれで、あなたたちにとっていい結果になることを祈っています。
さっさと消えろ、極つぶし。最後まで陰気臭い真似をしやがって。だいたいその服装どうなんだ？街中でマントなんて羽織って敬遠されないのか？
皆さんもう慣れてくださいましたから。
Yeah, they just think he's a regular priest.
それに、ほら、この格好だと獲物を刺していてもバレないでしょ？
What weapon?
まあ、トウコさんには見抜かれてしまいましたが、相手があなたですからね。恥ずかしながら長物を3本ほどこっそり。
What if this guy just has like no magecraft at all and he's just hiding like 3 guns? Eri turned and walked back in the direction he came from with the smile still on his face. It didn't seem like... She seemed shocked by it though, so she didn't even realize he had weapons on him. Oh. What a mysterious guy.
ふざけやがって。こっちは1本、それも担当ぐらいにしか見抜けなかった。そもそも3本ってなんだよ。魔術師でもないくせにどう
Oh
や
my
っ
god, I
て
was
隠せ
right.
る
He
の？
doesn't have any magecraft.
あのバカ、手品師にくら替えしたわけじゃあるまいな。
So he's not a mage. But he's probably still stronger than Toko. What the heck? She truly hated the fact that he had the upper hand on her, but she also felt a bit relieved. If she had actually noticed how heavily armed he was during that brief conversation, it would have been enough to instantly set off a fight. Toko wasn't sure which one of them would have come out the victor if that had happened. What the heck, is this guy OP? Eiri Fumitsuka had been that kind of man for as long as she had known him. He didn't need any reason, or even an opponent to fight. Nor did he need any kind of connection or hatred. He was just a machine that simply needed an ignition. He was murder incarnate, with no qualms about cutting someone down. What the heck? Toko had only seen that side of him once. It was back when she was still a relatively happy disciple of magecraft. Toko had been standing quietly before her grandfather, crying. The instant her first tears fell, without warning, without hesitation, Eiri cut down their master in an instant. What the?
なんでどうしてあなたがあの人を切りつけたの？
いえ、今なら切れると思いましたので。
Eiri could not fathom how much this curt response would affect such a young Toko. He had not meant to say, my opponent showed a moment of weakness, and I knew I could win, so I took the opportunity. What the heck? Wait, so is their master their grandfather? And that's why he has no body? All he meant was... I felt capable of killing him, so I did. He killed their grand... What the f... Who is this guy? What the heck? He possessed some sort of superhuman ability that allowed him to destroy the mortal vessel of a mage who had been infinitely close to being a magician. He killed a guy who had 5th magic. What? Or almost had 5th magic. Huh? No, actually, who is this? No, I'm way more invested in like this guy is so mysterious. I'm way more invested in him than everything that's been going on with Bayo and Toko this chapter. He killed their granddad. What?
ああ、ほんとうさんくさい、めんどく
Also,
さ
how
い。
did he even get accepted as an apprentice?
でも目障りだから絶対殺すし、魔法を奪ってからの仕事がまた一つ増えちゃったじゃない。バカエリ。
Toko put her glasses back on and turned on her heel. She had completed all her major tasks for the day. But we still don't know what that scent was that makes her so happy. All that was left was to make some money to buy food for her familiar and head back to the hideout.
ちょ、何あの乙女軸!
Is that where the scent is coming from? Is she just a tsundere?
でも目障りだから絶対殺すし、魔法を奪ってからの仕事がまた一つ増えちゃったじゃない。バカエリ。
Wait, that's what makes her like that when she goes back home? Setting aside Bayo's mental shout of dismay for a moment, the scent that had been bothering him for the past few days had suddenly disappeared. His employer was back to being the old Toko Awazaki he knew, and she was headed into the entertainment district. Bayo sniffed at the air. The scent had vanished, and he no longer had a reason to continue tailing Toko. But where had it gone? And where had it come from in the first place? I mean, it had to be from Airi, right? Bayo thought about it for a few moments.
さっきの男が怪しいよね。
Bayo regained his composure and decided to follow the trail of the man's scent. He had no idea that where he was going was his employer's worst nightmare. The mansion? The church? The church was too obvious. What? The church was set up to accept visitors any time of the day, any day of the year. The church was the savior of the lost and the poor, and recently had even ventured into the wedding industry for some extra income. It was closely involved with the public welfare of Misaki City, and was doing fairly well for itself in that regard. However, there was one problem.
エイリ神父はまた外出ですか。律香もサボタージュ、奉仕の生徒さんたちも日に日に減っていく一方、結局労働力は私一人だけなのですね。
Even if their financial situation was stable, they seemed to be chronically understaffed.
だいたいこの町の人々は新人が足りなさすぎます。給金がなければ働けないなど、人生を何だと思っているのでしょう。物欲だけで構成された一日を過ごしていては、懐は豊かになっても心が貧しくなるだけでしょうに。
So true. The nun muttered to herself quietly as she picked up the stepladder with one hand. Although it was a proper stepladder they used for cleaning the church windows and weighed too much to be carried by even two strong adults, the mass didn't seem to faze her.
人々の心の荒廃も気になりますが、物価の上昇も捨ておけません。消費税なるものの導入もささやかれますし、エイリ神父にはもっと一日で驚異的な成果を上げる結婚式の素晴らしさを知っていただかないと。あの人は誰彼何彼気分で世話をして後のこととか考えませんから。裏庭に集まった野良猫たちはどうするんですか。ああ、私ですね。それも私が受け持つのですね。もう何でもかんでも肉体労働は私なのですね。
Wait, why doesn't Sojiro just volunteer? He loves that. This nun mumbling to herself at a near constant pace was Sister Yuika Suse. There is a reason for her unusual behavior. Yuika was completely blind and had honed her other senses to keenly perceive her surroundings. She was extremely sensitive to the presence of living creatures, particularly humans, and could detect when someone was within a radius of 30 feet. She could talk to herself so openly now because she did not sense anyone nearby.
今日の余り物はと。ああ、もらい物でジャムの詰め合わせがありましたね。どうなのでしょう、主よ。猫って2日経った岩のように硬いパンでもペーストすればいける口なんでしょうか。
Sister Yuiko was busy putting away the cleaning tools while simultaneously trying to prepare dinner for the hungry animals mewing in the back garden. When suddenly...
おや？新しい迷子ですか？
Bayo? Sister Yuiko suddenly sensed the presence of a small dog in the church.
ごめんなさい。今日は猫限定の日なの。君が混ざってしまったら猫どもが驚くわ。餌ならここで恵んであげますから、中に入るのはまた今度にしてくださいね。
She put her food in front of the small brown dog to stop him from coming any further inside the church's gate. Yuike was somewhat rougher in her treatment of non-human creatures.
何この神気臭い生き物。
Bayo, who convinced himself to transform into a small dog instead of a wolf like he really wanted, only saw Sister Yuika as an obstacle in his way. He could smell the scent of the man in black ahead, further inside. Bayo thought little of humans, and in this moment, Sister Yuika was simply an obstacle. so naturally he ignored her warnings and attempted to push through the gate.
なんでしょうこの色。この子すごい色していますけど、もしかして高級な品種なのでしょうか。だとしたら
He might be some wealthy person's pet. Since the person came to the church, its rich owner might also attend church services. Yuka stopped trying to push the dog away from the gate.
ごめんなさいね。エイリ神父が目当てなんでしょうけど、また出かけてしまったの。今日一番の餌をあげますから、おとなしく帰ってくださいませ。
ああ、もう邪魔、この新規臭い人。よし、周りに誰もいないし、首を噛み寄ろ。
Bayo's front legs suddenly stopped before he could launch himself at Sister Yuika. Sound like a can. Sister Yuka opened the lid of the bottle she held and poured out a glimmering liquid into a small dish. She set it down in front of the dog.
ほら、お食べ。
The mysterious, unknown liquid sat in front of Bayo. It smelled like nothing he'd ever smelled before. Bayo was known to let curiosity get the best of him. Even if it was poisoned, no poison of that natural... The honey adventure. Sweeter honey makes him want sweeter poison. This is so exotic to him, it's actually... Is dog food just gonna make his day or something? He lapped up a mouthful.
何?
Oh no. He lapped up a little more. He loves dog food. Oh my god. The honey adventure. He lapped up even more. He lapped up more and more.
おや、牛乳を飲むような舐めっぷり。犬ながら惚れ惚れします。
これ、もっと欲しい。
The church became filled with the echoes of Bayo's boistering barking. At this point, he'd completely forgotten about the man said.
甘いですか？私も感動しました。犬どもにも甘味をたしなむ心があるのですね。
甘い。これが甘いってこと？
Bayo looked up at Sister Yuka as she whispered to him. He had the feeling that sweet was an important word he should remember. This food sent a sensation through him that was like a flash of lightning. Wait, did she feed him honey? Or... Oh, I thought it was dog food, but like... Honey probably makes more sense considering the title of the chapter. Until this point, eating food had been nothing more than a process of refueling. He liked hamburgers, but that never amounted to more than a preference for a particular mouthfeel. He only ate because he needed the nutrition. But this was different. This food was not necessary to his survival. And yet, he knew he wanted more. He didn't really need it, but it made him feel good. It was like food for his soul rather than his body.
あれ、そもそもこの匂いって。
He stopped wagging his tail. The golden wolf in the form of a small dog sat with the food that was the very origin of his name in front of him. Beowulf was faced with a difficult problem he was unable to solve.
Tadaima.
What? I think she might be a bit pissed that he snuck out.
はい。
Oh.
おかえりなさい、
Uh-oh.
ベオくん。
He's cooked.
遅いお帰りにお姉さん心配しちゃった。こんな時間まで無断外出とか心配したぞ。 教育係兼飼い主としてバッボーイしなくちゃいけないから、そこに正座。
Bayo had transformed back into human form and returned to the workshop. Toko was waiting there for him with a big, strained smile on her face.
あ、そうか。
Bayo knew he had messed up. He had failed to get back home before Toko because of Sister Yuika.
正座は嫌です。そりゃ無断で外に出てたけど、誰にも見つかってないし、
Yuika saw
別
him.
に僕悪いことしてないし。
誰にも見つかっていない？ってことはベオくん、裏山で遊んでたの？
裏山じゃなくて町。気づかなかったでしょ。実はトウコさんを尾行していただけなのです。
Toko froze at Bayo's completely unexpected response. But she was used to him by now. She just sighed and rubbed her head, now throbbing from a terrible headache.
いいでしょう。見つからなければいたずらじゃないと教えたのは私だしね。主人の尾行禁止とは命令していなかったし。今回の尾行については不問に付します。でもどうやって人目を避けたの？その格好だったらさすがに気づくと思うんだけど、私。
そこは企業秘密です。教えたら今日みたいなトウコさんもう見れなくなっちゃうし。楽しそうだったよね、あの人と。
I don't know if I'd call that fun. Toko's response was both honest and out of character. Even Bayo was surprised at how taken aback she was by his statement.
それは違う。どんな勘違いをしたのか知らないけど、あれはただの交渉よ。教会の神父相手に町を人質に見立てて不干渉を念押ししただけで。
いや、楽しそうに見えたのは女の人の方だけど。あの全身ぐるぐる巻きに自分を縛ってた方。
Woman and Wolf stared at each other for a silent moment. Bayo looked satisfied with himself and his secret information.
つまりあれってトウコさんのつがい？
No. Toko nearly choked at the utterly fearless question. She took her glasses off. The puppet master wordlessly removed her glasses and tamped down her emotions.
なんでそんな言葉だけ知ってるんだお前は。耳戸島にも程があるぞ。
こんなの生き物として普通の言葉じゃない。まあトウコさんが普通の生き物だとは思っていなかったから、僕としても意外だけど。
True, I'm surprised myself.
それでどうなの？あのパ
Potato
ッ
looking
としな
man.
いポテトみたいなオス。
Bayo was suddenly irritated. He was irritated, but he couldn't figure out why.
何も何も、お前の言う通りしなびたフライドポテトだよ。少なくとも私にとってはね。
ほんと？ただの敵？トウコさんにとって特別なのは僕だけ？
ああ、今のところはね。
Why was she coming back all happy all those days then?
焼けぼっくいに火がつくかとも思ったが、完全にしけっていた。あれを前にしてどうこう思うのはもう二度とないだろうさ。
そっか。なんでもないならもう忘れることにします。でも、焼けぼっくいって何？
思い出を蒸し返して前後不覚に陥ること。まあその可能性だって少しはあったと思うよ。あんなんでも私の初恋の相手のようだし。
Bayo had no first-hand experience with love, but he at least understood the concept of first love.
初恋ってトウ
That's
コ
what
さ
I'm
んに？
saying. Her?
つがいはありで初恋はなしとか、どれだけ私を動物的に見ているんだお前は。昔の話だよ。 私が10代になったばかりで、あれが祖父の弟子だった頃の話だ。奴は魔術ではなく精神修行の一環として祖父と付き合っていたが。
Wait, who is Aerie to be like able to know about magecraft? Like he doesn't study magecraft. He's just a priest. So like why does he get to know about magecraft? And why did he get accepted as an apprentice? Toko spoke indifferently, and it was clear from the look on her face that there is no longer any attachment there. Yet there is still a tenderness in her words that caused Bayo to furrow his brow.
トウコさん、まだ好きなわけ？
いや、自分でも呆れるぐらい何もなかった。ただ青春の幻影というのかな。そういう頃の象徴のような知人とは話すだけで懐かしいものなんだよ。人間的には全く魅力を感じなくなったが、奴と話しているだけでこう昔の自分を思い返して笑いたくなる。
Bayo grew only more confused as Toko spoke with such passion. He couldn't wrap his head around the concept that she hated him yet somehow also still liked him.
そういうの僕わかんないな。
お前には好き嫌いがないからな。ロジックだけじゃ人の関係は解けないよ。
そんなのあります。食べ物だって襟好みするじゃんか僕。
True, like whatever he ate.
お前の基準は有益か無益かだけだろ。野生動物にとって味覚は十分な栄養値があるかないかを測るセンサーでしかない。栄養値を度外視して食事をとるのは人間だけだ。
That's not true.
自分の体に合っているからその食材を好むではないんだよ。人は楽しいか楽しくないかで食事をとる。
甘いもの、好きなものって甘く見えるの？
ものの例えだが苦くは見えないだろ。まあ人によってはそれもありだが。そのあたりはあれだな、性癖の問題だ。卵が先か鶏が先かの話さ。好きだから甘いのか、甘いから好きなのかとね。
でも僕、トウコさんは甘く見えないけど。
そりゃそうだろう。そもそもお前はまだ生きていないからな。あるだけのものと生きていることはまた別の話だ。皮肉な話だがね、その違いを知ったとき、お前は無敵ではなくなるよ、ベオ。
If you were ever to figure out that You exist, but you're not really alive. The foreshadowing of when he actually feels fear for the first time by Sojiro. Is that when he becomes alive?
さあ、夕食だ。今日も大勝ちしたからな。霜降りのいいところを買ってきたぞ。
My god, marble beef. Toko walked into the classroom, back in her usual mood. Bayo lingered in the hallway, looking dejected. You're not actually alive. Those words pierced right through Bayo's heart, but he didn't quite know why yet. 3 weeks would pass before he got a hint of why that was the case. Luke Beowulf was perfect, and yet he would lose at the hands of a particularly imperfect creature. Dang. Oh? Are we finally jumping into the epilogue? The sound of a phone ringing echoed through the empty hallways of the school. Oh, no, we're still in the past. Wait. It was January, and both the mage who had remodeled the building... Wait, they fixed the building. And the magician who had expelled her from it were long gone. Wait, okay. I think I remember all the damage got erased, right? Because using fifth magic with time and everything, the damage reverted after everything was done, right? I think that's what happened. The telephone that Toko had installed on the whim rang without letting up, as if it knew for sure that someone was there to answer it. Heck, he's just a bum now, living alone in the school building. Something rustled inside. There were definitely no people inside the school building, but there was one non-human creature sleeping there.
はい、こちら伽藍の道第二出張店。
You've reached the Misaki branch of the Hollow Shrine. What's the Hollow Shrine?
天使は尻尾巻いて逃げ出した後ですので、ご用のある方は発信音の後にメッセージを。どうこさん？うん、はいはい。どうぞ行ってらっしゃい。僕のことはお構いなく。
She lost, she's leaving, giving one farewell to Bayo. But what does Bayo do now? Why does he have whiskers? The classroom was occupied by a young boy with blonde hair. Even before the phone rang, he was in human form. It used to be that when he was alone, he would always doze off in his wolf form, but not anymore. What's with the change in attitude? Because he used to hate his human form and he just did it out of necessity, but why does he choose to use it now, even when he's alone? There's no real need for him to stay in his human form, but he did anyway. It was now his normal state of being when he was not in combat.
じゃ、必要になったら呼んでよね。契約は切れたけど、僕はまだトウコさんの使い魔だし。うん、そう。嫌味なんかじゃないって。狼はね、誇り高いんだよ。トウコさん以上の雇い主が見つかるまで、首輪はそっちに預けておきます。
Bayo couldn't help but wonder where Toko was traveling. She had accepted her loss and ended her contract with her familiar. She said it was because she hadn't fulfilled her promise to let him fight magic. Oh, that's true, he just got mocked by a normal guy. However, that was actually the fault of her familiar, and not her responsibility at all. Bayo had not fulfilled his duty as her bodyguard yet.
で、トウコさんは今どこ？
Would Bayo be able to beat 5th Magic Aoko? It was the name of a country he wasn't familiar with. After the battle, she had promptly left Japan to develop a way to break the curse.
何が敗北を認めただよ。
Oh yeah, the curse was like if she ever set foot into the boundaries of Misaki again, she'd turn into a frog or something.
それってまだ諦めてないってことじゃん。
She's gonna come back in Mahoyo too. Toko laughed on the other end of the line. Somehow Bayo sensed the tropical scent coming through the phone. Whether that was a mystical effect of Toko's handcrafted phone, or the werewolf's super senses was unclear.
じゃあ、さっさと帰ってきてね。
So
僕はこっちに残ってるから。おいしいお土産よろしく。
Toko asked him why. If he had really decided to stay on her as her familiar, there is no reason for him to stay there.
実は僕もよくわかんない。だけど。
I'll be waiting here. Come home soon. I don't think that's gonna be happening. Yeah, there is no reason for him to stay there. He wants to stay her familiar. So he could have just gone with her and left Misaki with her. But he decided to stay alone in the school building for some reason and maintain his human form. As he stumbled over his words, Bayo patted his chest a few times and remembered the pain he had felt. He feels alive. He feels alive.
ここにいれば甘いってどんなものかわかるような気がするのです。
The wolf who had learned to accept being wasteful expressed his future goal, a vague hint of delight in his voice. What's his future goal? Thus concluded an exceptionally rare case of first love, sweet as honey. A case of first love, as in for Bayo? The wolf who had learned to accept being wasteful. Wait, no, wait, I'm trying to figure out what he meant by that. What is his future goal? And what is this rare case of first love? What is that sweetness he's talking about? Because I mean, it probably has something to do with Sojo punching him. And he actually feels alive now. Because he's never felt fear before. It was something new to him. Huh. Maybe he just read the next chapter to find out. Well, unfortunately, that is not happening until the weekend. So, yeah. Anyone can sleep, but not laugh. The very last chapter. Dang. And with this chapter, we will be fully done with Mahoyo. Surely you can do the first 20 minutes. No, I gotta go to bed, but... You know that sleep is very important for luck maxing? True. This is a long one. I mean, that's why I'm saving it for the weekend. I'm just hoping I'm gonna lock in on the weekend and like do like a giga-long stream just to finish it. Or we just split this last chapter. We just split this last chapter into like 2 parts on the weekend. I don't know. Mahoyo, let's see how long this is. 3.5 hours. Uh-oh. Yeah, we'll just log in and finish it out. Exercise. It has choices. Uh-oh. Now what? Oh well. It's bedtime. G.